Hello, I'm Karen Franck. I'm at the University of Tennessee, and I'm here today with my colleague, Joseph Donaldson, to talk to you about building a 4-H STEM career pathway.
And Dr. Frank and I are delighted to present this webinar about building a 4-H STEM career pathway for youth success to members of the National Association of Extension 4-H Agents. And we hope this is an important professional development opportunity for all of you.
So we're going to be talking about results from the 4-H Science Building a 4-H Career Pathway initiative that was a 3-year collaboration among National 4-H Council, Lockheed Martin, and 13 state partners. The idea that they would help youth develop STEM and workforce skills necessary for success, to immerse youth in the field of STEM education and work, and to engage youth with the science and engineering career pathway created by National 4-H Council. The key goal of this project was to involve more girls and minority youth in STEM education and career fields. The ultimate goal was to contribute to a robust pipeline for science professions in high demand, such as computer sciences and engineers. Program concept drew on several recommendations from 2012 Riley and Butler's National Review of 8 promising 4-H science programs, specifically looking at how to involve science experts to lead and advise local programming, and how to recruit underrepresented youth through ongoing partnerships with schools and urban communities. And finally, how to develop program activities to expose youth to science careers. The project we're going to be talking about today, the science experts were corporate volunteers from Lockheed Martin who provided their time and expertise in local 4-H STEM programs. So 13 states were selected to participate in this grant, and all of the selected states had at least one Lockheed Martin facility in the state. Across the 13 states in the 3-year time period, the key benchmarks were to engage at least 30,000 youth, with half of those being girls and minorities, to engage 500 Lockheed Martin volunteers as employees as volunteers, and to engage at least 1,000 4-H community volunteers. Our objectives in this webinar are to provide an overview of this project. We're going to talk about the major programming and outcomes of the 4-H Science Building a 4-H Career Pathway initiative. We're going to present the 4-H Career Pathway model as an effective approach to involving youth in STEM education and careers. And we're going to discuss ways to scale up and sustain the 4-H Career Pathway model. I encourage you to contact us or to refer to the final project report, which is available on request or can be downloaded from the University of Tennessee Extension website. It is publication W668 from the University of Tennessee Extension, and you can Google W668 4-H Career Pathway and easily find the publication. STEM continues to be an important area for education and economic development in this country. There is high demand for skilled STEM workers, but not enough youth are pursuing STEM education to meet that demand. Part of this shortfall is that youth continue to be underrepresented in STEM advanced education and careers. 4-H continues to promote STEM knowledge and careers through a variety of effective programs. Systematic 4-H programming combined with a career pathway could continue to strengthen these efforts as well as strengthen the future of 4-H. Some of the statistics that back up some of this increased and so Dr. Donaldson and myself conducted a process evaluation to measure the effectiveness of this grant and to provide ongoing opportunities for quality improvement to meet the benchmarks and to show progress. We've listed here all of the methods that we use to conduct this process evaluation, from conducting site visits where we did interviews and focus groups with a variety of people who were involved in the grant, as well as getting documentation such as how many people were being met through monthly activity reports. And finally, we did surveys of youth participants using the 4-H common measures. The initial 4-H career pathway displayed here was developed as part of the original grant proposal to illustrate the need for a robust pipeline to engage youth, especially girls and minorities, a STEM career pathway. The idea was that youth would be engaged and encouraged to proceed through the pathway by participating in different activities and events. The first phase is Explore, and it involves youth in introductory short-term projects, such as National Youth Science Day. Then the idea is that the youth progresses to the next phase, which is Learn, which involves more long-term experiences to engage more girls and youth and underrepresented youth. In this phase, for example, corporate volunteers visit, lead, or evaluate 4-H STEM projects. In the third phase, Practice, this is a long-term rigorous projects to build both STEM and leadership skills in preparation for a college STEM major. In this phase, corporate volunteers would provide ongoing coaching and guidance to youth, either virtually or in person. And then the final phase is the experience phase, in which youth collaborate with corporate volunteers to understand careers and gain marketable experience. Here, youth would engage with employees in training, shadowing, internship, and other career readiness activities. In 2018, the National 4-H STEM Career Pathway Working Group was convened, and we worked together to adapt the 4-H STEM career pathway based on the process evaluation outcome, lesson learned, and best practices. The working group consisted of 7 professionals and researchers representing 4 land-grant universities and National 4-H Council. Of the 7 working group members, 5 had been involved in this initiative from the beginning. These different perspectives provided valuable counsel on how to summarize the process evaluation's key findings so that the 4-H STEM career pathway would positively impact the entire 4-H movement. Notice that the updated 4-H STEM career pathway shows the major milestones and outcomes at each level: Explore, Learn, Practice, and Experience. Also, the outcomes delineate both STEM skills and college and career readiness skills. Here are the states that participated in this grant. The participating institutions were grouped into Cohort 1 and Cohort 2. Cohort 1 institutions were expected to implement all 4 phases of the 4-H STEM career pathway. Cohort 2 were expected to implement only the Explore phase. This program emphasized awareness of science-related activities. The working group refined the career pathway by identifying types of interaction at each pathway phase, including example methods, including recommended curricula and tools, as you can see here in this chart. So for this process evaluation, it was very successful and engaged quite a few youth, so over 80,000 youth participated in these 4-H STEM activities. And almost 50% were girls and over 50% were minority youth. And you can see here that youth indicated that many of them, that this was their first year of 4-H. So 78% of 4th through 7th graders and 43% of 8th through 12th graders indicated that this was their first year of 4-H participation. This suggests that the initiative successfully reached new audience who might not have otherwise been involved in 4-H if not for 4-H STEM. Youth self-reports on 4-H common measures show positive changes in questions related to science attitudes, skills, and abilities, as you can see in this chart here. And finally, the initiative was also successful in engaging volunteers. States had to provide significant personal resources in order for this initiative to be successful, and this included a commitment of 4-H professionals' time to the project, as well as recruiting and volunteers. Throughout the 3 years of this project, 4,200 volunteers contributed over 16,000 hours, and 4-H professionals allocated over 11,000 hours toward these 4-H STEM activities. The typical 4-H extension professional managed 244 volunteers, collectively reached 5,212 youth per year. This underscores that 4-H youth development programs are a good investment because 4-H mobilizes adults, organizations, and communities for positive youth development, not only in this project, but in the many 4-H projects that we work with. So now Dr. Donaldson is going to share information about lessons learned, best practices, and recommendations for 4-H STEM programs.
Thank you, Dr. Franck. I will cover 6 major lessons learned and best practices, starting with the need to develop partnerships to provide role models. This was a very successful practice to engage STEM professionals who could serve as role models for girls and minority youth. 4-H professionals built partnerships at both the local and state levels with organizations such as industry, specifically Lockheed Martin, universities and colleges, other youth-focused organizations and agencies, as well as STEM professional organizations. These STEM professional organizations included the Society of Women Engineers and the National Society of Black Engineers. Both of these professional associations emphasized the importance of community service and engagement, which made partnering with 4-H mutually beneficial. In addition to role models with colleges, universities, and professional organizations, I want to specifically speak to the role models that Extension 4-H professionals recruited through Lockheed Martin. 4-H professionals recruited role models through Lockheed Martin, and they looked for situations that would be mutually beneficial to the 4-H program as well as to the individual Lockheed Martin volunteer. For example, Texas 4-H partnered with Lockheed Martin volunteers to conduct National Youth Science Day experiments with youth groups at the Texas State Fair. This was a very successful event for 4-H youth, and when the event concluded, the Lockheed Martin employees were able to enjoy the state fair with their families. And a representative comment from a Texas 4-H professional is shown on your screen. So just a role model. Not that I'm like their role model, but just them seeing another Black woman that's into science. Next, I will discuss the importance of connecting 4-H STEM to careers. Respondents in our interviews identified the importance of connecting 4-H STEM activities to both advanced educational opportunities as well as future careers. They also discussed the need to incorporate career development in all 4-H curricula. This included the opportunity for advanced internships to continue the competencies they had developed in 4-H and look for long-term opportunities such as internships and job shadowing experiences. A number of ideas came from 4-H professionals and volunteers, and these included having career information sessions for 4-H parents as well as youth, and also requesting that National 4-H Council work with partners like Lockheed Martin to provide various internships and scholarships. In the words of one Maryland 4-H professional, so if we can incorporate the career piece in all of our curriculum so that it just becomes second nature, then I think it's easier for our volunteers when we pass on those curriculums to then just incorporate it. We learned that it's important to provide resources related to STEM and careers. 4-H professionals and volunteers identified the importance of having resources to successfully implement STEM programs. This included financial support, because some STEM programs are expensive, such as robotics, training for volunteers and 4-H professionals, and curricula that's updated, prepackaged, and engaging. Several 4-H professionals mentioned that National Youth Science Day curricula offered a model, so to speak, because of the facilitator kit and the manual and the way it provides an easy to follow, hands-on experience for young people. The next lesson we learned was the need to put an emphasis on cultural competency for 4-H professionals and volunteers. There is a need for ongoing professional development in this area, as respondents talked about the importance of understanding different cultures, including how those cultures could include different reactions and attitudes toward 4-H and STEM. This was described by one 4-H professional as follows. Parents were happy for their girls to come and participate in our programming after school to learn about whatever they were interested in. But when it came time to talk about college applications, when it came time to talk about career paths, the conversation ended. That wasn't an option for a lot of the girls who were participating in our programs. So it was fine for them to be interested in science or engineering, but it wasn't okay for them to become a scientist or to become an engineer. And this discussion with this 4-H professional just underscored the need to understand cultural competence, and in this case, be working with the parents very early on in the process and looking toward diffusion of innovations and looking toward social change among people. Several 4-H professionals identified their limited knowledge and skills related to STEM subject matter. They also felt that many potential community volunteers lacked these skills and abilities. Youth talked about the limitations of working with agents and club volunteers who did not have science backgrounds. This finding is a clear indication of the need for trained volunteers with the passion and expertise in not only youth development, but in STEM as well. In the words of one Kentucky 4-H professional, a lot of our traditional 4-H volunteers are still scared to death of science. They see science as something in a lab. So trying to get volunteers to understand that you are doing science, even though it's not lab-related science, that's one of our biggest challenges. And a Texas 4-H professional expressed this best practice about ongoing STEM training and the need for ongoing STEM training this way. All our employees are adaptable. but it would be nice to have a training on the foundation of physics or mechanics or basic engineering concepts, so that whenever I go out to teach robotics, or whenever they go out to teach aerodynamics, or whatever the latest, greatest lesson is, then we have a leg to stand on that makes us more credible. And finally, from the standpoint of lessons learned and best practices, I want to share the need to provide ongoing youth development training for volunteers. Our interviews identified the need to improve youth development skills, particularly among science experts and science professionals, including Lockheed Martin employees. Lockheed Martin volunteers identified the importance of understanding common behaviors and expectations for different age groups, as well as effective methods for engaging youth. In the words of one California Lockheed Martin volunteer, there's a need to break it down by age group, like for the science day. We didn't know the age group. It was like such a wide range, and then maybe some common behaviors for that group. Where, like studies show, their attention span is 3 minutes. That would have been helpful, because in those 2 minutes, you'll lose them if you're just saying, hi, how are you? Next, let's take a look at some key recommendations. The first is related to programming. Every Lockheed Martin employee, community volunteer, and Extension 4-H professional involved in the program recommended this program for broader implementation. Because the findings indicate a successful initiative, it's recommended that programming continue beyond this initial grant and expand throughout the country. The issues that motivated this initiative will exist for many years, and it is hoped that this initiative will continue to provide opportunities for diverse youth and ultimately contribute to a robust pipeline for science and engineering professions that are in high demands. We recommend including career pathway information in all 4-H curricula. Several 4-H professionals, Lockheed Martin volunteers, parents, and youth identified the importance of career development in all 4-H programs. 4-H professionals recommended that while a STEM career pathway approach was necessary for all 4-H STEM programs, career development needs to be strengthened and incorporated across everything we do in 4-H. The third recommendation is to develop advanced STEM career development opportunities. Many Extension 4-H professionals feel ill-prepared to implement job shadowing, internships, and other forms of career development for youth. Therefore, we recommend that National 4-H Council and Lockheed Martin explore ways to promote greater employee engagement in career development activities, specifically the practice and experience phases of the 4-H STEM career pathway. Virtual career development could mediate difficulties related to travel, time, and work demands. A Lockheed Martin STEM career day, on-site or virtual, is recommended to connect 4-H youth with STEM professionals. It's also recommended that Lockheed Martin promote 4-H volunteer opportunities from within the organization, such as through internal corporate newsletters. It is recommended that targeted professional and volunteer development opportunities be provided. We recommend that the Cooperative Extension System and National 4-H Council collaborate to provide professional and volunteer development in 3 areas that we discussed: enhanced cultural competencies, basic and more advanced science and engineering competencies, and basic and more advanced youth development competencies. Extension 4-H professionals consistently identified greater cultural competence as a key to expanding programming with underserved audiences. The state grantees that had the best overall performance in serving girls and minorities are the same states represented at the National 4-H STEM Futures Conference in 2016, which included interactive sessions on cultural competencies. We recommend to continue the development of 4-H STEM curriculum. The evaluation plan was designed to provide both formative and summative evaluation so that formative evaluation findings could be used to improve the program performance over the course of the 3-year initiative. National 4-H Council representatives were especially mindful of program improvement suggestions, and this dedication to quality improvement was likely a major contributor to the benchmarks being exceeded for youth reach, community volunteerism, and Lockheed Martin employee engagement. During the project's first year, we identified 2 areas for improvement, specifically professional development and curriculum. National 4-H Council responded by contracting with Click to Science PD and Courageon. Click to Science PD is an online targeted approach to professional development, specifically for out-of-school time programs. Courageon is an online curriculum that uses videos, games, and self-reflection quizzes to help youth explore STEM careers. National 4-H Council also promoted the Build Your Future curriculum for state grantees to teach college and career readiness skills. These resources all show great promise and should be continued because of the ways they empowered both volunteers and professionals to improve the ways that they worked with youth in real-world STEM jobs and educational pathways. Our full report discusses future research, and I want to take a moment just to highlight some of the future research potential that we see from the process evaluation we've conducted over the past 3 years. One area for future research is to explore the relationships between and among 4-H STEM programs, the career pathway, and educational tracks and career placements. Another line of research would be to explore how child development complements the career pathway. Assessments of professional development for 4-H professionals and volunteers are needed, as well as successful methods for delivering 4-H STEM programs. And finally, based on the process evaluation we conducted, we would suggest that barriers and facilitators need to be researched for understanding how to engage youth and deliver successful 4-H STEM programs. Dr. Franck and I are very grateful to National 4-H Council and Lockheed Martin for the opportunity to contribute to this project, and we certainly acknowledge the dedicated Extension 4-H professionals, 4-H community volunteers, and Lockheed Martin employees who strive to make a difference in the lives of youth. Again, the final report lists our full references, and should you have questions or concerns about anything you've learned today related to 4-H STEM career pathway or our final report, please do not hesitate to contact us. Again, I'm Joseph Donaldson at North Carolina State University, and my colleague is Dr. Karen Franck at the University of Tennessee. Thanks for all you do, and we look forward to hearing from you.